So next on the symposium is a panel titled Post-Baccalaureate Reflections from Across the Eras. The panel is comprised of 3 Post-Bac Fellows for Five College DH, 2 former and then 1 current, myself. And first I will start with some bios on us. Jeffrey Moro is a PhD candidate in English with a certification in digital studies at the University of Maryland, College Park. His research is at the crossroads of digital media studies and the environmental humanities. His dissertation, titled Atmospheric Media, Computation and the Environmental Imagination, explores how we imagine computation in terms of physical and cultural atmospheres. Prior to joining UMD, he was a post-baccalaureate resident in digital humanities for the 5CollDH program from 2013 to 2016. He holds degrees in English and theater and dance from Amherst College. Second to speak will be Alex Brenon, who is a graduate student pursuing a master's degree in science education at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, where she is also a research assistant for IT and classics. Alex was the Post-Bac Fellow for 5CollDH in Digital Humanities, 5CollDH during the 2018-2019 academic year. Before the fellowship, she was also the Post-Bac Web Technologist for Blended Learning at Five Colleges, Inc. She graduated from Smith College with degrees in computer science and astronomy. And my name is Evan Young, as I mentioned, and I'm the current Post-Bac Fellow for 5CollDH, and I'll be moderating the panel. I'm also a 2019 graduate of Amherst College, where I received degrees in English and French and completed the Five College Certificate in Native American and Indigenous Studies. During my senior year at Amherst, I was an undergraduate digital humanities fellow, while Alex was the Post-Bac. So without further ado, I had sent some open-ended prompting questions to Alex and Jeffrey for them to respond to, and here they are. What did you learn from your time as a post-baccalaureate fellow? What were your goals as a fellow? How did your position contribute to the 5CollDH or 5CollBLDH initiative? And what were the focuses of your position? What aspects of your experience as a post-baccalaureate fellow do you find are specific to your time? And what experiences are common across the different quote unquote eras of 5CollDH, now 5CollBLDH? And since Jeffrey is unable to be here in person with us, he did very kindly send in a video recording, which I will share with you all now.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much to Eric and Evan for reaching out to invite me to participate on this panel. I'm sorry that I'm unable to participate synchronously, but such is life under the sign of pandemic, I suppose. So I have the distinction of having been the program's first post-baccalaureate resident in digital humanities, back when it was just Five College Digital Humanities, and blended learning was but a glimmer in a grant writer's eye. I thought it would be worthwhile to return to the original job description that I was tasked with fresh out of my undergrad at Amherst in 2013. And it read, and I quote, "You will collaborate with students, faculty members, librarians, and information and education technology staff members from multiple campuses on a range of projects engaging digital technology in the study and teaching of the humanities. Your work will include helping to shape conceptual approaches to scholarly questions, but also assisting in the application of digital technology. In addition to collaborating on selected current projects, you will be expected to undertake an independent project during the appointment," end quote. So being a post-bac was a tall order of a job, one that put a tremendous amount of trust in someone who definitionally doesn't really know that much about anything. And what I remember most from the early days of the job was that it was a constant negotiation with Dana Liebson, our first faculty director, and then Marissa Parham, who was faculty director for most of my time there, to figure out what a post-bac was even supposed to do. Is a post-bac a glorified staff position at attractively reduced rates? Is it a quasi-master's program? And who, out of the 5 institutions, 6 if you add 5 colleges, is supposed to cut the paycheck? So together with my faculty directors, our steering committee, and Mari Nyrop and Kim Bain, two more postbacks that we hired after my second year, I believe that we were able to forge a unique and actually quite special path for the position. We became brain trusts for Five College DH, the staff members uniquely positioned to keep track of all the moving pieces while everyone else frittered around with their day jobs. We had tremendous research latitude, which we were able to use to shape conversations happening across the campuses. I credit the post-baccalaureate job for preparing me for my current work as a PhD candidate here at the University of Maryland more than anything else I could imagine. Balancing the work of researching, teaching, running events, and pursuing parallel side projects is easy once you've done it on 5 campuses at once. So I thought I'd take the opportunity of this invitation and this little talk to go back and run the numbers as to what the work actually consisted in. So I was a postbac for 3 years, over which I assisted around 15 faculty and staff projects, supervised 16 student fellows, taught 3 January term courses, submitted around 100 check requests, sat in a dozen or so steering committee meetings, been on 3 or 4 hiring committees, ran a floating gallery, finally figured out what the command line was. I gave 5 talks, introduced Marissa Parham to Slack, and then fielded an unspeakable number of Slack chat rooms as a result, and I oversaw the production of around 30 gigabytes of audiovisual media. I don't know if those numbers were impressive then or even now, but I do know that they constitute an unusual spread of activities in academia for someone fresh out of undergrad. My time with Five College DH was singularly rewarding, precisely for the fact that I had the chance to do whatever it was that interested me at the time. Marissa and I developed what we called the CV test. If it was articulable as something valuable on your CV, no reason for a post-bac not to do it. And finally, in response to one of Evan's questions that he posed us before we organized these talks, I did the post-bac job longer than any other post-bac, so I think this gives me a unique vantage point from which to see the progression of the program over time. I watched it grow from something designed primarily as seed grants for faculty projects into a really robust intellectual community. And I should say, I think much of the engine for this growth was our decision to run an undergraduate fellows program, which I'm glad to see has been a lasting part of the grant. While I was sad to hear from Eric that Five College DH's time is almost up, I remain proud of what we were able to accomplish with the time that we had, and wish all of you the very best in continuing the work of the digital humanities in the 5 colleges. Thank you.
Next, we have Alex. Go ahead.
Hi. So, as Evan said, I started out as a post-bac fellow for web technology with 5 College IT as a whole. And this was working at the 5 Colleges building, and where I built websites. I started work on that Omeka site that you saw earlier, and I also worked on other various blended learning projects. And then the next year, as we transitioned from just separately blended learning and digital humanities into a blended program, I became a fellow for that process as well. So that was the big change of my year, was that we had to kind of figure out these two programs that were very similar in many ways, but also had their own uniqueness, and figure out what the crossover was and what that really meant. So while I was a fellow, I built the websites for the program. I worked with the fellows program as well, which was definitely a highlight of my experience. And another highlight was that I researched student and professor experiences with blended learning and digital humanities. And this was kind of a project that I came up with and asked Eric, and that's one of the best parts about this program of being a fellow, is that you really have this freedom to, as Jeffrey said, explore anything that would fit on the CV. So I did this research, and then I was able to present at the Blended Learning Conference at Bryn Mawr, which was just really a fantastic experience. I would say that the program opened a lot of doors for me. As Evan introduced me, I'm still working with Eric, this time on his Pompeii Classics projects. And what it really taught me was that whatever level you're at, even if you're a post-bac and, you know, entry level, whatever, if you really work hard and show your interest in things and show your capability, that the level of seniority ultimately doesn't entirely matter. Like, you can do things, you can have the confidence to say, okay, like, I think we should go this direction. And that realizing that and getting the confidence to speak up for myself in that way was a big benefit of the program for me.
So whereas Jeffrey was the first Post-Bac fellow and Alex oversaw the merging of what were once two separate programs, blended learning and digital humanities, my time as Post-Bac is really marked by the sunsetting of 5CollDH. It's still a very living program, as both Alex and Jeffrey mentioned. The fellows are really one of the gems of the 5CollDH initiative. And it's been really my pleasure to work with our 5 fellows, and I can't wait for you to hear their presentations so that we can celebrate them together. My transition from undergraduate DH fellow last year to Post-Bac was pretty immediate. I graduated from Amherst in May of last year, 2019, and just over a month later in June, was in my office at UMass, finding my bearings in my first full-time job. As Post-Bac, I have done everything from editing hours of video footage from 5CollDH events to monitoring our 3 program WordPress sites to publishing content on our blog. With Eric and on my own, I've also consulted with a number of faculty members in the 5 colleges who work in DH, including a former professor of mine at Amherst College, Rhonda Cobham-Sander. And I've worked with Rhonda on 2 fronts. First was to help her update the digital humanities curriculum for a course of hers called Digital Africas, a version of which I took with Professor Cobham-Sander my junior fall. And the course, whose primary assignments are actually interactive blog posts that students will post on a communal blog, it was my first real experience with digital humanities. Rhonda had reached out to me asking about updating some curriculum for that. And then the second reason that we were in touch for consultation was during this past fall, the 2 of us collaborated in organizing a virtual presentation and Q&A with Kenyan film director and social media activist Jim Chuchu, which we ended up showing at Amherst College in the fall. We live streamed him in, which was pretty fun. I also developed and facilitated an hour-and-a-half introductory workshop on Twine, which is a nonlinear digital storytelling platform. And I did that for UMass anthropology professor Krista Harper's class of over 30 undergrads. And the workshop was open to the public, and I guided workshop attendees through technical difficulties surrounding programming, demonstrating how to add images in Twine, how to include basic programming for variability and conditional logic in your Twine stories, how to store and distribute the stories as stable HTML files in GitHub. And I also, of course, kept my focus turned to making preparations for this year's cohort of undergraduate fellows. So throughout the summer and fall, I had organized 2 meet and greet events during the buildup of the fellowship application, specifically in September and October. I prepared application materials and conducted outreach to the 5 college campuses. And at the end of November, I read all of the application submissions and helped select our current DH fellows. In order to prepare for the fellowship, I also attended a number of workshops through UMass libraries in order to better prepare myself for the anticipated needs of the incoming fellows, while also, as Alex and Jeffrey mentioned, finding ways that I could have the fellowship support me in my goals, which I'm still figuring out, but definitely have something to do with education and curriculum development. The workshops that I attended ranged from a 4-part series of mapping data using geographic information systems to getting to know version control in Git and GitHub to website development in Drupal. And while preparing for the undergraduate fellowship, I also was spending time compiling a 62-page and growing inventory detailing the presence of digital humanities and blended learning in the Five College. So to do this, I went to every single Five College website, so all 5 of the campuses, and compiled a document that included every time the search term digital humanities or blended learning came up, and sorted them. And as a document, the inventory showcases the widespread distribution and discussion, if not the application of digital humanities and blended learning in the 5 colleges. And as I take the next steps in converting 5CollDH and the website into a legacy site for posterity, that document will find its way up there. And then last things from me, more recently, this past February, I had the chance to present some of my research that I did as an undergraduate fellow on augmented reality technology, which ended up being a huge part of my senior thesis in English. I had the chance to present on the incorporation of AR technology in my project at the inaugural Connecticut Digital Humanities Conference at Trinity College, Hartford. Over 100 people, including librarians, technologists, faculty, undergraduate and graduate students, attended from throughout New England, even as far away as Austria. And it was a really amazing chance for me to meet other digital humanists in the area, figure out what questions that are being posed, what those are, and just generally solidify the network. And out of the conference, there grew a commitment to the development of digital humanities as a network in New England. And that definitely gives me hope that even though the time for Five College BLDH is at an end, there are still other conferences and events, programs that are springing up.